Welcome back, everybody. Clint today with Classic Firearms, here to talk about barrel length again for the 7.62x39 cartridge. But we're not going to talk so much about velocity because we've already covered that in a completely separate video where we tested what type of velocity you'd get at a certain different barrel lengths for the 7.62x39 cartridge. What we're here to talk about today is kind of which one is ideal, right? Because we've got some of the more popular barrel lengths and then one new rifle from Pioneer Arms over here that we wanted to take out and try out today. This is their National Match model with a 20-inch barrel, so it kind of is RPK reminiscent, but still true to the AK design, and I'll get into details about that here in a little bit. We also have the Zastava M70 for our 16-inch barrel, and then my Meridian Defense Pestilence, which is a 14.5 with a pinned and weld Yankee Hill machine muzzle device. And I would like to say that these are probably some of the more common barrel lengths, especially if you think about the SKS being, closer to about a 20-inch barrel or so, the RPK being closer to a 20-inch, again, give or take here on either side, and then the 16-inch, which is where the AK was originally designed. That's what it originally designed to have, was a 16-inch barrel, and, well, is that the ideal barrel length? Because if you think about the United States military, the M16, again, two very different cartridges, 5.56 and 7.62x39, or 7.62, Soviet, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, the M16 has a 20-inch barrel, and that has been, I guess you could say, a very effective tool for quite some time. So what about the AK? Is it really going to be more advantageous with a longer barrel, or will something with a shorter barrel and maybe a silencer be better? So without further ado, let's take a look. Now, one thing I want to go ahead and point out is when we did our velocity testing, because obviously you can't talk about barrel length without talking about velocity because, well, added inches gives you more speed. That's at least what we have found out on the channel with every caliber that we have shot, pretty much except for like 9mm. But anyway, you just have to watch that video. But anyway, so with this, if I recall correctly, out of a 16-inch barrel, we got 2,365 feet per second out of a 7.62x39, I think it was 122 grain cartridge projectile. With a 20-inch barrel, and we're going to test it today with this because we actually shot it with an SKS, but with a 20-inch barrel, we got 2,367 feet per second, a difference of 2 feet per second between a 16-inch and a 20-inch. So it's kind of like, wow, okay, that added barrel length might not give you more velocity. I mean, a couple of feet per second, that's not a big deal whatsoever. So is there an advantage of having a longer barrel? In this case, maybe, but I think one of the biggest things we want to pay attention to is your sight radius. And some of you might be wondering, like, okay, well, what is a sight radius? If you take a look at, like, my pistol here, right? Your sight radius is the distance between your rear sight and your front sight. The reason why a lot of people might not be as accurate with a pistol is, well, there's a bunch of things that play into it. One of which, you don't have as many points of contact. You don't have a cheek weld, you don't have a good stock weld into the shoulder, you might not have a good positioning on your support hand, whatever it might be. But anyway, with this is all I get with my pistol, right? That's it. There's nothing else I can really do here to better stabilize this except maybe rest the magazine on the ground or a different shooting platform or position, whatever else it might be. But one other thing you'll notice too is the sight radius is much shorter than what it might be even on my 14.5 here, right? It is obviously quite a bit shorter. So if you look, I'm just going to show this really quick. Take a look at where the rear sights, I'm going to try to line them up just about right. The rear sight on my Meridian Defense Pestilence sits right here. That's where my first eye would be making contact here, or my the first focal point that I'll be making contact with. And then the front sight post right down here. Now notice the front sight is integrated on the gas block of the Pestilence. It's obviously a little bit further back on the front side of my FNX 45 Tactical here. What does that mean? If you're utilizing the iron sights to shoot, what you'll notice is if you have a longer sight radius, you'll actually notice a little bit more deviation and a little bit more, I guess you could say, imperfection, a little bit of shake, a little bit of wobble, maybe a little bit more, you'll notice your sights aren't aligned just right. You don't have light shining through on either side of your front sight post through your rear sight. You might not notice it as much on something like this. Now, I love my Trijicon Suppressor night sights on my FNX 45 Tactical because it's a little bit more fine and they sit a little bit higher and they just naturally pick up a lot easier for me. And again, that front sight post is a little bit more narrow than, like, let's take a look at your standard Glock front sight post, big fat white dot, right? That's not a very precise sight picture that you get. In other words, if I'm a little bit further back from my targets, like at 50 yards, even the 100-yard identity target, or the infinite target down there, you'll notice that my front sight post here is going to be taking up a majority of the actual target. In other words, I'm covering most of the target, which some people might think, oh, that's going to be a hit. I am really worried about shot placement, however. I'm not satisfied with just a hit in the shoulder. I want to be center mass, I want to be T-box, I want to be heart, I want to be somewhere I can literally point out, and that's a lot easier to do at a closer range. This is me figuratively moving closer to my target at a closer range with a pistol. Let's go ahead and holster that guy, and let's grab the shortest one that we have as far as sight radius goes here. Again, standard AK sights here. All right, nice and short radius, and RS regulate with the Trijicon RMR. I'm not going to be utilizing the RMR today, just to be fair to the other guys, so I'll just go ahead and remove that QD, again, RS regulate. And I get my sight picture here. Again, it looks nice and easy. I think I know I'd be able to make contact with those targets downrange at the 50-yard, even the 100-yard without a problem. But again, it is a short radius. Let's go ahead and move to the 16-inch. We can compare where our sight radii is here. Again, these should be standing at about a similar position. So you'll notice that it is just a couple inches further out, closer to the muzzle, instead of back here on the gas block like it is on the Pestilence. All right, cool. And I think what we'll try to do is maybe get some B-roll to lay over too, so that way you guys can kind of see the sight picture a little bit different. It might be a little difficult though. That's a really tight notch there to try to line up. But this one here, even that short little bit, to me, I can already start to tell a little bit of a difference when it comes to getting that target, that sight alignment and that target acquisition, and where I want my point of impact to be. Now we're moving on over to the 20-inch guy. Let's compare that. Now let's see, we even got a couple more inches on the front sight there, so we're really way on out there. Let's compare it to the 14.5 of the Pestilence. Bam, those are pretty much lined up right where I want them to be. Again, even way further more out there. All right, cool. So now I've got even a longer sight radius here, and throwing that way on out there, I can notice for a fact more subtle movement. I can even see closer to my heart beating and seeing that slight shift. This is obviously exaggerating. That slight, I guess you could say, like a jerk that you might do in between your heartbeats. If I switch back over to the 14.5, not as much. It is pretty interesting to see, and it's not something you really take into consideration when you just go to the range. If you pick up something like this 20-inch, the Pioneer National match, you pick this up with this longer sight radius, and then you pick up the 14.5 here with the shorter sight radius, and then you just aim on your target, you'll notice really quick, oh wow, that is a little bit more different. And there's always been more reasons as to why a longer sight radius brings more accuracy, but that's kind of the one I like the most, because quite simply, you pick up a little bit more, you pick up a little bit more of those deviations in your own personal movement. So with that being said, let's go ahead now, let's load up a couple of mags that are already loaded, and let's shoot some of these, and let's talk a little bit more about which barrel length I would personally prefer and which environment we'll discuss. So let's take the very first shots here with the Pioneer Arms National Match, as they're calling it, with again that 20-inch barrel. By the way, we did do just a quick little test to see if the 20-inch barrel on the Pioneer here would actually get better or different readings than the one that we tested on previously in the 7.62x39 barrel length comparison, and we did notice that we actually got higher velocities out of this gun. So with the 20-inch barrel for 7.62x39 Wolf 122 grain ammunition, we did get actually 2,399 feet per second average velocity out of 10 shots. 10 shots. All right, so it was a little bit faster than that 2,369 feet per second that we got before, or was it 267 or 65? I just know there's a 2 feet per second difference between the 16-inch and a 20-inch. So this one is significantly quicker. So how does it do as far as actually feel to shoot? Well, first thing, let's go ahead and talk a couple of features really quick. On the National Match, we do have that kind of enhanced safety lever. So right back here, it's a lot easier to actuate just with your trigger finger, which is pretty nice. If you want to come up with your thumb, you can, still easy enough to actuate because of that additional piece added to the actual safety. And on top of that, you'll know you'll have your charging handle catch, your bolt catch feature. So I can go ahead and rack this all the way back, and now it's locked to the rear. A lot of, ranges kind of like for you to have the bolt side open, the bolt side facing up, and then the bolt locked back to the rear, so that way they can see a clear chamber, right? Anyway, we are now locked and loaded. Oh, and optics mount, anybody, just in case you wanted to do that. I do have my RMR on my Meridian Defense over there. Maybe we'll throw it on here just for fun in a little bit. But anyway, let's see how this thing shoots and how it feels. All right, let's go for that 100-yard. Well, aim a little bit lower. There we go. First of all, this gun is light. For it to have a 20-inch barrel, that thing is light, which is pretty nice. So if you were wanting something that had a little bit more velocity to it in that awesome 7.62x39 cartridge to carry around in the woods for defense, protection, whatever else it might be, Red Dawn situation, I don't know. This would be a pretty cool option if you ask me. And the wood furniture they have on it looks pretty freaking good. They did a good job with this rifle. Anyway, so how does it feel to shoot? First thing I notice is it is a lightweight gun. So that 7.62x39 cartridge, decent recoil to it, but it's nothing that's uncomfortable or not manageable. Those of you that have shot a 7.62x39 AK before, it feels like a 7.62x39 AK. That's all there is to it. You know you're shooting a cool gun. That's all there is to it. All right. Now, what I can tell you right now is it was very easy for me to start noticing, again, with that longer sight radius, that deviation. I have not touched the sights on this gun at all. So out of the box, at about 80 yards or so, I'm making contact on the target, but I'm having to fill out my parameters. I'm trying to fill out where exactly I need to be aiming to make sure I'm getting that point of impact that I want. I was aiming pretty much center mass, just low. So just below the target, and I was bringing that still pretty good. All I'm seeing is gray. I can't see individual shots here. The up close target, it's kind of all over, which again, we're talking condensed C-zone. So if you guys aren't familiar with that means, a condensed C-zone target is not much wider than the width of my hand and about this tall or so. It's a small target. So I feel good enough about making those impacts that I did with the open sights here. No optic or anything like that. The gun feels great to shoot and the trigger feels pretty good too. So, all right, I like it. So now let's go ahead and move down to the 16-inch barrel of the Zastava. So let's go ahead and start off with the Zastava M70. This, of course, is our 16-inch. What the standard AK would have been as far as barrel length goes. This is actually far from like a standard AK, other than utilizing the same long stroke piston-driven system. It also utilizes different type of furniture that you would typically find, even how the stock mounts. It also has a bulge trunnion, all sorts of fun things. But how does it actually shoot? And let's see here. Shoots really good, and just for fun, there's a puddle down there. All right, cool. So with this one here, I haven't adjusted the sights or anything like that. So I need to aim at the 100-yard, which actually, it's 100-yard if we were at the bench. It's closer to 80 yards at this point. At the 80-yard target, I'm having to aim closer to the base of the target to actually get my shots to impact. That's okay, I just haven't adjusted for elevation, so Kentucky windage that thing and just, you know, send it, all right? The target here that's a little bit closer, obviously that one was pretty easy to hit. So much so too that you'll notice that the iron sights on the AK, again, this is your standard sight radius on a 16-inch AK that utilizes a front sight post and not an integrated gas block front sight. Okay, so with this, it becomes really easy to actually engage and hit your target at a closer range, and you're not even focusing so much on the rear sight, you're just kind of focusing at the front sight post. What I was doing when I was hitting those targets a little bit closer at a faster repetition or a faster rate was kind of looking over the rear sight and knowing that I just need to kind of place my front sight post a little bit lower. Since I'm kind of looking up and over my rear sight, that means I'll probably be impacting a little bit higher in this case, just because that's how I'm aiming. And so it got really easy just to kind of like, all right, cool, well, I know I'll be making those hits there just by making that slight adjustment, and that worked. And then of course at the distance target, I'm actually trying to focus on my rear and front sight and make sure that I got proper sight alignment before pulling the trigger, which, you know, went a little ways. Having the sight sighted in definitely helps. Now, what's great about this barrel length is this is a great dual multi-purpose barrel length. The 16-inch is short enough so that way if you needed to do a little bit more close quarters combat, do some maybe room clearing, something like that, this is a really comfortable barrel length that I think a lot of people are actually comfortable with, because here in the United States, 16 inches is the limit before you start getting into AOW, pistol, short-barreled rifle territory. Make sure you're supporting organizations like Gun Owners of America, by the way. There's a lot of stuff happening out there right now, so make sure you're contacting your representatives and, again, supporting organizations like GOA who actually stand up and fight for your rights and are trying their best to preserve the Second Amendment. So do that. Anyway, with that being said, in this country, 16 inches is that limitation. Now, you can go longer than that, that's no problem, and that's for rifles. For shotguns, it's 18 inches, different category, different subject. But for rifles, 16 inches is that limitation, which makes sense for the AK. It's designed to have a 16-inch barrel. Okay, cool. So here in the United States, this makes sense. So what about something a little bit shorter, like my Meridian Defense Pestilence with a 14.5-inch barrel? Let's grab it, shoot it, and see how it does. And now the Meridian Defense Pestilence. This, again, just aiming down the sights, I'm already noticing a big difference. Trying to get a much clearer sight picture as far as lining up my sights, or a much clearer sight alignment and focusing on that, it's not as easy. That 20-inch barrel on the Pioneer National match, that, again, longer sight radius just makes it a little bit easier. It is different. Again, it's something that's hard to explain. You just have to look down the sights yourself and you'll see that it's just clear, right? It's just your eyes are able to focus a little bit better on something that's a little bit further out. And because of that, your front sight post doesn't look like it's taking up as much of your target. So you're able to make those fine adjustments a little bit easier and a little bit better than you can with something a little bit shorter like this here. So let's go ahead and insert our Lee Armory Banana Mag for the win. And let's just go ahead and run the Meridian Defense here and see how it feels. And also, again, I have not made any side adjustments, just how it comes from the factory. Okay, I think that was to the right. Well, I have no idea where I'm hitting. Hold on. Okay, that was just over the left shoulder. All right, once I get it figured out where I'm hitting, by the way, how I'm doing that, I'm literally just bouncing around the target. I'm not making an impact when I'm aiming here. Let me aim over here. Oh, I made impact. Let me aim here again. Let me aim a little bit further. Still making impact. Still making impact. Oh, now I'm missing. Now I know I'm on that right edge. Let's bring it back a little bit more here. Just sight in your sights and things will get a little bit easier. But anyway, okay, so holding just over the left shoulder of the target, I'm making impact here. Now, as far as being able to make that adjustment, it came a lot easier to me with that 20-inch barrel. Why? I think personally, again, I don't know what these rifles are sighted into. I have not messed with the front sight post as far as my windage goes. Oh, sorry, elevation. Okay, so with that, let me just see if my hold is right here. Just over the left shoulder. There we go. Great. Whew, that 3-chamber brake is nasty. So of course there are devices to help with that. But anyway, so as far as the barrel length goes on this guy, if you were to add a suppressor or something like that, a shorter barrel makes a little bit of sense. However, just before coming out here, I did actually take a couple of shots unsuppressed and suppressed, and I did notice that I was actually getting much slower results with my Yankee Hill Machine silencer attached to the Meridian Defense Pestilence here. It was quicker unsuppressed, which has kind of always gone against my thinking that suppressors sometimes add velocity. So I think that might be a video for another day. Let me know if you would like to see straight up a comparison. 762, 39, 308, 300 blackout, 556. We've even got 9 and 45 that we can suppress, and just see what the different results are with suppressor usage. I wonder if our buddy Jay, I wonder if I could text Jay and see if he would like to fly out and maybe be a part of that video. If you don't know who I'm talking about, Jay from Pew Science, just go take a look at it. If you really want to dig into numbers when it comes to things like that, that's the guy. Anyway, okay, cool. So as far as this barrel length goes, again, if you're wanting for more of a do-all, maybe not to distance, especially again if you're going to be running only iron sights and you're running not a front sight post closer to the muzzle, which would give me about another inch or two as far as increasing my radius from the rear to the front sight. I would say that this would be good for urban engagements, if you will. So something moving in and around a vehicle. Again, if this was maybe an underfolder or a side folder, that would be perfect, but I really just love the design and look of the Pestilence here. It's a really nice AK. That's all I got to say about that. But as far as everything else goes, you can't go wrong with the 16-inch standard barrel length. The sight radius with a front sight post closer to the muzzle works great. It feels great. The 20-inch, however, I've got to say, I prefer that. I really do prefer that longer sight radius. Everything that I've been talking about and just kind of giving you guys my opinion and my experience here today at the range makes sense. As far as getting that sight alignment and that sight picture on target, it was a lot easier to make those adjustments and get those shots on target. So I'm happy with the 20-inch by Pioneer Arms. Check it out if you'd like to see it. And from there, don't forget to head on over to cfcontest.com to see what we've got going on that and on that front. But yeah, I think it's safe to say we're good here. Let me know what you guys think down below. Are you going to pick up one of these 20-inch barrels and try it out for yourself? And on top of that, what is your favorite barrel length for an AK? I know some of you are probably like, Draco has entered the chat. That would be, run Draco, right, Adam? Okay, cool. So I'll leave it off there, guys. As always, we appreciate you. We want to see you down in the commenting down below, of course, all about AKs, your favorite barrel length, which type of ammo you prefer to run out of different barrel lengths. That's a thing, especially if you're using it defensively and perhaps a pistol. So we'll leave it off there, guys. God bless.